What's that sound? It's For Amusement Only, the EM and Bingo Pinball Podcast.
Welcome back to For Amusement Only. This is Nick Baldridge. Before I get started today, I wanted to take a moment and thank Jared Morgan from the Blockade podcast, who took the time to write me and let me know he was enjoying the show, and also provide some of his experience in Australia with bingos and EM machines. He writes, "I'm slowly working my way through your podcast, and I'm really finding the knowledge you're sharing about EMs fascinating. I'm definitely a guy of the post-EM era, but learning how you play bingo pins and the rush you get kind of reminds me of when I was playing Safecracker when it was first released. I pumped dollar after dollar in Australia into that thing to collect the tokens. I still have them as well as a reminder of how powerful a risk-reward game can be." Further, he says, "We don't see many bingos down here in Australia, at least from what I've seen. I do know some collectors that have some Zaccaria pinball machines, though, and there are a few collectors that have EMs in their collection." So thank you, Jared. I really enjoy your podcast as well. For those who don't know, I enjoy virtual pinball as well, because I have neither the money nor the space to house every machine that I enjoy, because I enjoy most of them. So the Pinball Arcade is a good substitute for some of the modern machines, and there are a few EMs in there as well. We also talked briefly about the Zaccaria app, because Zaccaria's EMs are being reproduced in that app as well, and the actual physics and gameplay on that application are very nice. It's quite impressive. But regardless, Jared, thank you very much for your emails, and I appreciate you taking the time to write to me about Australia. I find that very interesting that bingos are hard to find. Although, I've got to say, since I never knew about them before, I didn't really ever see one either. So it could just be a matter of finding the right collector. But thank you very much. For today's topic, I wanted to talk about a feature which was used in the early days of Bally Bingos, called the Super Card. Now, the Super Card, on games that had it, was a smaller 3x3 grid of numbers. So instead of the typical 5x5 of the main bingo card, there were one or more super cards which would light, either randomly or progressively with more money. And these super cards would award you the replays for 4 in a row for only 3 in a row. The trick is that on the super card, the numbers selected for that smaller card are not necessarily ones that you would normally shoot for on the main card. So on the main card, you have a 5x5 grid. It's a lot easier to get a 3 in a row hit than it is on the super card with the 3x3 grid. So when you have the super card lit, depending on how your first ball or two go, you may want to start shooting for the numbers on the super card. If you do so, you're almost guaranteed not to make a hit on the main card. In rare instances, you may, but it adds an interesting element of play, similar to the corners feature, which I'll be going into at a later time, on 6-card bingos. One of United's last games, Monaco, uses the super card. This is a bit of a curiosity because the super card was typically only seen on games with single deck scoring. That means that there was only one set of advancing odds and there were no separate colors in which to score. Bally at the time had started producing triple deck scoring, which means there were red, yellow, and green odds, which would all step separately. So when Monaco came out, it was competing against these Bally games, which had much more complex rule sets than single deck scoring. Bally games also at the time would have moving numbers features and so forth. Monaco did not. So similar to a situation like in 1947, where games immediately started looking older than they were based on competitors' features. In 1947, of course, flippers were invented by Gottlieb. This Monaco, put out by United, would look fairly dated in comparison with the Bally Bingo games, which were coming out at the time. Magic Squares were popular at the time that Monaco came out in the Bally world. So, that's all for tonight. Thank you very much for joining me. My name again is Nick Baldridge. You can reach me at foramusementonlypodcast@gmail.com, and you can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Pocket Casts, via RSS, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on our website, which is foramusementonly.libsyn.com. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.